last time mine wasn't, I have advanced settings through my work Zoom, and I wasn't able to access it that way. So I had nothing last time. I couldn't even blur it.
I don't know what happened to it. Man. That's unfortunate. Maybe whatever happened to you and Karina last time is happening to me.
Last time that happened to me, I restarted it and it came back.
So you had to go out of Zoom and then back in?
I restarted my whole computer. I don't know if I had to do that. I just did that and then it worked.
Oh, I don't want to make us late though.
Yeah, and Nance said to start without her. She'll be there soon, here soon. So don't know, you want to give it a couple minutes or you want to start? Liz, what do you think?
All right, folks say we're ready to go. So I think we're ready to go.
Okay. Can you go ahead and start the meeting?
Okay, so we'll call the meeting to order at 6:32.
Recording in progress.
Anyone like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Okay, I'll do it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Liz, would you like to read the meeting announcement?
Yes. Pursuant to AB 361, this meeting will be held entirely virtually. All methods available for public participation are detailed on the first page of the agenda.
Okay, and roll call.
OSOP Committee Member Kim Hester Williams.
Here.
OSOP Committee Member McClinton Horner.
Here.
OSOP Committee Member Christian.
Here.
Vice Chair Ortiz.
Present.
And Chair Mattson.
Here.
Thank you. PCS Honorary Commissioner Munn. PCS Commissioner Griggs.
Here.
PCS Commissioner Mamrell.
Here.
PCS Commissioner Margalotti.
Here.
Vice Chair Cervente.
Here.
And PCS Chair Einberger.
Here.
Thank you.
Honorary Chair Munn, say anything about not being here?
Chair Einberger, I did not receive any notification about her not being here tonight.
Okay. Okay, so we'll move on to public comment. Are there any public comments?
Chair Einberger, I did not receive any public comments, and there is nobody in the audience that is wishing to make a public comment at this time.
Okay, thank you. So are there any agenda changes? Anyone have any changes? No? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to business and new business, and Chair Mattson will take over.
Okay, hi, sorry everybody about my Zoom link there. Okay, so we have one business item today. It's called Roles and Responsibilities. Before I turn this over to Jason and Allie, the amended agenda came out at 3:30 yesterday. And when I got back I was out of town last night and looked at my computer, I realized it had 153 pages in an attachment. And I don't know whether everybody's gotten a chance to absorb all that. So I just wanted to start off with that. I don't know whether a question for everybody or just a statement. I'm not sure we're in a situation to do major discussion and decision-making on roles and responsibilities. And I'm hoping that perhaps tonight will be an introduction of what the topic is. And then we have another meeting later to really work, give everybody a chance to dissect and understand what the package is. So with that, I guess I'll turn it over to Jason and Allie, unless anybody wants to say anything first. And Kristen and I talked earlier about meeting style, and it turned out when we went on Zoom, I adopted PCS's structure where they went down the list and everybody took turns, and PCS adopted OSAC's structure where they did open communication and conversations. So it's pretty funny that, 2 years later, we realized we've kind of switched how we do things. So I'm going to try to adopt PCS's structure, which used to be OSAC's structure, of just open discussion. If I am missing you, please, Tara's got her hand up, so I'm going to call on her, but try to get my attention, and I will try to scan and make sure we're all participating. Tara?
Thank you for pointing that out, Nance. I actually wasn't aware of that when you started telling us that. I started checking my email and I see it here. So I don't even know what it's about yet, the packet. So
I'll be happy to explain in a moment.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else before I turn it over? Krista?
Yeah, it was just, it was a lot to get through. I saw it, but I just had to skim through it because I didn't have enough time to read it all. So it was difficult.
Yeah, if I may chime in, I also didn't have time to do it. It seems that these days we're all swamped with work and everything else that we do in our community. So I apologize, I did not have time. But I also wanted to point out, and tell me if this is the time to do it or not, but our meeting, this meeting was not announced on the Parks and Rec Facebook page or on the city's Facebook page. So I thought that they were gonna be all announced and publicized so that people in our community can see it. So that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm not sure, Karina, what the Commissioner Smende, what the mix-up was there, but
it's okay.
Before we turn it to you, Jason, first, does anybody else have anything they wanted to say before we got started? We're all okay. Thanks. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah. So. Apologize for the large attachment. The amended agenda included just a bunch of historical documents. There was nothing new in there developed by staff. There's no staff report or analysis by staff or anything like that. It's just a compilation of historical documents. And as I was preparing for this meeting yesterday, I felt, geez, it might be good if we uploaded this information, and we've kind of compiled all of it. So a lot of our remarks here tonight are drawn from some of those historical documents. I didn't necessarily intend for you to have to pour all the way through them. I just wanted to note that we had a bunch of these historical documents and we're basing it on that. So I apologize if that created some confusion for you. We aren't going to be making any decisions tonight. I really do view this as the first step in a process. So just also wanted to kind of clarify that there's nothing in what we uploaded last night that there's any sort of decisions coming from tonight. It was just some historical background. But I do want to thank you, chairs, both of you, for having the ability to gather everybody together tonight. Thanks everyone for getting together for this joint meeting. I have some prepared remarks. I'd like to go through these prepared remarks and then have the opportunity for questions and comments from all of you and the public, if there are any members of the public as well. The purpose tonight is really to chart a new path forward for these two bodies. The City Council has tasked me with modernizing and professionalizing all aspects of this organization, and we've accomplished a lot over the last 4.5 years. Some of the changes were implemented before the pandemic, and others were made in response to it. The council has directed me to improve the interface with you all and to improve the functionality with city staff who implements council's policy directions. I'm hopeful that tonight's conversation will be well received. Again, I apologize with the late addition of materials. And if there are any parts of this conversation that's upsetting I do apologize in advance for that. Like I said, we're not going to be making a decision tonight, but this is the beginning of a journey. None of this discussion is meant to diminish in any way any of the tremendous contributions that each of you makes to this community. Nevertheless, just like the rest of this organization, we need to reimagine these two bodies through the context of a post-pandemic world and also through the lens of efficient local government structure. Like I said, there won't be any decisions tonight. It's only the city council who will decide what roles these advisory bodies will play. Like I mentioned, I'm viewing this as the beginning of a journey to create a blueprint for success, and I hope that each of you will join in that with us. Tonight's agenda really can be laid out in a couple of parts. We'll start first by going through some of the history and initial purpose of these two bodies, and that was kind of the information I uploaded, or we uploaded yesterday. I'm going to spend a few moments talking about the council manager form of government. It's the kind of government that we have here in American Canyon, and then move on to discussions about the purposes of citizen advisory committees, of which both these bodies are considered. Next, I do want to spend some time talking about future roles and responsibilities. And lastly, jump into some next steps. At this point, though, I'll stop and ask if there are any questions that you all have. Okay. If not, I wanted to jump into just the history a little bit and initial purpose of each of these bodies. PCS was formed in 1999, and at the time, it was given very broad powers and delegated final decision-making authority on certain issues with appeal processes to the city council. There were, like I said, a very broad set of areas under consideration, and it makes sense a little bit when you understand the history of the city, having incorporated just 7 years prior. The former American Canyon County Water District really served a lot of municipal purposes before incorporation. And although it provided water and wastewater services, it actually had a recreation committee, which is a little bit unique for a utility district, but it really acted like a community services district more than just a utility district. So there was already a pattern of the community at the time gathering together around recreation ideas. And so it made some sense in 1999 that there was this PCS was formed with some very broad authority and even some decision-making authority. Those were changed in 2008. In 2008, PCS was really modified to become an advisory body, or what we refer to now as a citizen advisory committee. And I'll talk some later about the distinctions between those and some of the other bodies that we have. The scope and purview of PCS was also much more narrowly tailored in 2008. The Open Space Advisory Committee also has a somewhat unique history. It was formed in 2005, and its primary purpose was to try and gain access to the new open space and to the wetlands area. Some of you were around in 2005 and others were not around, but it's kind of interesting when the city was given the new open space. At the time, there was really no access to it. Vintage Ranch didn't exist, and the original access was across the railroad tracks, actually at Napa Junction Road, and there was quite a bit of effort made to move that access point. In large part, many of the original initial purposes of OSAC have been accomplished. I wanted to take a moment to talk a little bit about the council manager form of government. I think many of you, if not all of you, have actually been participants in our Citizens Academy. Can we take a moment and can you raise your hand if you were part of our Citizens Academy? Yeah, Clarence, I know almost all of you. If you recall from that first night of Citizens Academy and really through the whole program, we talked about the form of government here in American Canyon. And it's what's known as the council manager form of government. And sorry, I'm adjusting my screen here. what that means is the city council is elected, by the voters to provide leadership and policy direction for the direction of the city and the municipal government. We happen to have a directly elected mayor. That's not a requirement. Sometimes it's just a rotational mayor. But the council then hires a professional manager such as myself to run the city organization. You can kind of think of it as a business, whereas the city council would be the board of directors and myself, I would be the chief executive officer. We run that analogy further out, and we think of ourselves as a customer base of 21,000 or so, and a shareholder group of roughly 13,000, those registered voters who exercise their voting power. And so, this form of government differs from other forms of government, like the strong mayor form of government, for example, where the mayor is elected and then the mayor puts in place leadership in the government to make decisions and to have that executive function. You see the strong mayor form of government in large cities, Los Angeles and some other places, but for cities the size of Marin Canyon and across the nation, it's most common that there is this council manager form of government. And the purpose of it is to have the manager, the executive function, be separated and not immune to the politics that may be going on in the local community as it relates to councils and elections and things like that. So the role of the city council is to develop policies and goals, and wanted to kind of give some examples of that. The role of the staff is to develop strategies and then implementation tasks in service of those policies and goals. And so, for example, in the area of recreation, there might be a goal that the council adopts that says we want to ensure equitable access to recreation amenities. A very, very broad statement, a very broad goal. And then they might further develop a policy underneath that goal that says our policy is to have design standards for new playground equipment or replacements that accommodates the abilities of all users. And again, that kind of drills down on the goal, gets a little more specific, but it's not in and of itself particularly actionable. When you get to the lower level layers around strategies and implementation tasks, further refinement takes place, and this is really the role that staff plays. Staff would identify strategies such as routinely identify capital needs and outside funding opportunities for playground equipment replacement. An example task under that would be apply for Prop 68 funding for the replacement of playground equipment at Linwood Park. So I think you can kind of see how you drill down from a goal at a very high level to a task at a very low level. The city council is only ever going to be involved in those goals and policies. And even above the goals and policies are things like mission and vision statements and things like that. Those are the areas that the city council plays a role in. It's the city manager and the staff that plays a role in developing strategies and tasks and then implementing them. And then they go back and report that information to the city council. Your basic organizational structure is that the city staff reports to the city manager. The city manager has broad authority to hire and fire city staff at the executive level, at the lower levels in the organization. Those positions are collectively bargained with unions, many of the positions. And so we have bargaining agreements and hiring practices that govern that structure. But all of that reports only to the city manager. The city council is not involved in any of that other than to say they would approve, for example, the bargaining agreements. And then the city manager actually reports directly to the city council. And so I don't work for any one city council member. What I work towards is at least the majority, if not the unanimity of the city council. And so in effect, I don't have one person I report to a body. And a majority of that body is what takes action as it relates to the city manager. I have an employment agreement with the city that is approved by the city council. And all of these are pretty typical organizational structures, particularly for size of cities our size. And so we move over to these two bodies and really talking about the purpose of a citizens advisory committee, which these two bodies are. And we really want to define that term and distinguish it from other bodies. The term citizen advisory committee is kind of a generalist term used by professional management associations. I'm a member of the International City County Management Association, also known as ICMA, which is the professional organization for my profession. And they define this term as an advisory committee, not of the council, and one that is distinguished from statutory committees. And what they're referring to in that case would be something like the Planning Commission. So, for example, in California, the city is required to have a planning commission or something functionally equivalent. A zoning review board can constitute that. It doesn't exactly have to be a planning commission, but the zoning review board is another possibility. But the city is statutorily required to have a committee that makes final decisions in certain areas. And so our planning commission does that, both pursuant to state law and to delegated authority from the city council. They make final decisions. In all cases, those decisions can be appealed to the city council, but they do make final decisions in certain areas. And so, the ICMA really distinguishes between statutory committees like a planning commission and discretionary committees or citizen advisory committees like PCS and OSAC. There is no requirement to have PCS or requirement to have an open space committee either. And it's important to understand the distinctions between the discretionary and statutory committees, because it really relates to decision-making authority. Planning commissions may have or do have decision-making authority. Discretionary committees virtually never are given decision-making authority. And I'll talk about a little bit later about why that's done and why that's important. The discretionary committees, or what we're calling citizen advisory committees, make recommendations to the city council. And they make recommendations on policy matters that are within the purview of the city council. Essentially, they provide input on goals and policies. They stay at that level of goals and policies. They're not involved in day-to-day implementation, day-to-day activities, strategies, or tasks. They're involved only at the higher level goals and policy level. Advisory committees do not make recommendations on day-to-day activities, in part because the city council itself does not do that. And so it would not make sense to have an advisory committee advising the council on something it also doesn't get involved with. Citizen advisory committees do not provide direction to the manager or staff. Again, they only make recommendations to the city council and only on areas of policy and goals. I'm going to read an excerpt from a document from ICMA that I think really helped explain for me kind of what we're talking about and the purposes of a citizens advisory committee, and it's an attempt to really improve upon and make the best use of these advisory committees. I'm going to read now from this document, but the main attribute of an effective and useful citizens advisory committee is the extent to which the members of those committees have clearly stated objectives and a workable organizational structure. One purpose of this exercise is to maximize the effectiveness and productivity of these bodies. We have different proposed outcomes, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. All kinds of opportunities can be solved from a well-organized advisory committee. By appointing a committee, the city council gives other well-respected members of the community an opportunity to discuss without the pressure of making a decision. And that's an important point. Why does this matter? Well, I think only one of you is actually served on a decision-making body in local government, and that is actually committee member Christian, who serves as an elected member of the Napa Open Space District. I apologize if others of you have served on a final decision-making body. I just may not be aware of it. I myself have served on a final decision-making body. I served as the chair of the Napa Civil Service Commission for 3 or 4 years, and that decision-making body makes final decisions on labor disputes in the city of Napa. And so I understand the firsthand experience and the pressure that sometimes comes along with making final decisions. And so, when a city council or any decision-making body discusses an issue, there's always the possibility that the majority decides it's time to make a decision and call for a vote. And others on those bodies can be upset because they think more information is needed and would like to continue the discussion or the debate. And that can upset people, in that kind of decision-making realm. And so one reason a city council may appoint an advisory committee is to take an issue out of a decision-making arena with all the pressures of making final decisions and move it into an advice-making arena. It does that because advice-making is much less daunting than final decision-making. If you're providing input, at the end of the day, you're giving an opinion, but you're not on record as making a final decision. And that can be easier for people in the community to make those advice-making exercises, particularly on controversial issues. When a council feels like the community would be well served by removing the stress that comes with finality, they form these citizens advisory committees. And while this practice can be used for controversial topics, it can also be useful for ongoing issues of great importance to the community. One note, these advisory committees can be useful, but it can also be problematic. One common difficulty is when the committee is recognizing the fact that under this council manager form of government, they don't provide recommendations or directions to staff or the city manager. Also, the city council can ignore some or all of the committee's recommendations. And so, because the committee does not make decisions, it just provides advice to decision makers. If the committee's roles and responsibilities are not well understood or accepted, then there can be confusion and it can create chaos and so forth. Good bylaws really help clarify roles and responsibilities, and this is one area that I've identified has been lacking. I don't believe either of these two bodies has a set of bylaws. I haven't found one if they do have them. I'm actually incidentally working on an update to council's bylaws, but those of course would be different. One of my recommendations to the city council would be for staff to prepare a set of bylaws for the council's adoption. It's customary for a city council to provide a liaison to an advisory committee, but because funding is always, because unlimited funding is the exception, not the rule, councils usually limit the amount of staff time that will be devoted to research and writing and serving the advisory committee. It's important that the staff who's assigned to these committees be able to articulate the limitations to the committees in a manner that doesn't create misunderstanding or worse, confrontations with the manager or the city council. This is another area that I believe has not really existed before. I don't believe staff has really ever explained these limitations to you, and I apologize for this lack of awareness. I can't fix the past, but prospectively, I am committed to fulfilling the council's request, which is also to have a better direct connection with these bodies. In the future, I anticipate having annual joint sessions with the city council where they inform these bodies on which matters that they want advice about and the amount of staff time that they're willing to commit to the effort. To my knowledge, we haven't really had that direct connection in the past, or it's been a while if we've had. Lastly, I want to kind of move into future roles and responsibilities. We kind of have two pathways here with these two bodies, and I want to talk about two different ideas that we're looking into. The first of which relates to the Open Space Advisory Committee. We have an amazing opportunity right now with this committee to chart a course that I think creates a better use and a better interaction with the city. The timing is also really good, I guess, because we're well positioned to take on some additional property. We're talking about the formation of what would be known as the Friends of the American Canyon Open Space. This would be an organization that would be a nonprofit, IRS 501(c)(3) bona fide nonprofit with the board of directors. The city council would not be involved in the appointment of the board or its officials or any sort of organization. It probably would have, an ex officio member for coordination purposes, much like we have with the American Canyon Parks Foundation. But this organization would really be chartered to take, the accomplishments of OSAC, which was to gain access to Newell and to gain access to the wetlands, and to take those accomplishments and then to be a steward and a caretaker of those accomplishments. This group would have the ability to fundraise as a nonprofit, and they could take those proceeds and go and look at different maintenance activities, different educational activities, and really act as a caretaker of both the open space, American Canyon Open Space up in Newell and the wetlands. The timing I mentioned before actually relates to a property adjacent to the Newell Open Space, which is known as the Jaeger Open Space. We're currently in discussions with that property owner. They would like to make a comparable donation to the city that the Newell Open Space was. The properties would be connected by trails, and the group behind the Jaeger Open Space is well positioned to help launch this new nonprofit organization. And so we're really excited about this opportunity, and again, we think the timing is right. As it relates to PCS, one of the things I noted before was what I think is a lack of bylaws, and I think would be well served by having a set of bylaws that really makes clear the roles and responsibilities of this advisory committee. There are some policy matters that the city council would like input and recommendations on from PCS. For example, the Parks Master Plan, our Recreation User Fee Update, Clark Ranch Master Plan, and our Comprehensive General Plan Update are all planning and policy level documents that the council would appreciate some recommendations on. One of the other things that we've been evaluating is potentially a change to the name of PCS to reflect a broader arena of policy matters. I think the council might be receptive to not just necessarily limiting it to park and recreation, but potentially some other ideas, particularly as it relates to community services, and really what it means to provide community services. So limiting it to parks and community services kind of feels like it's more narrowed, and a potential name change might reflect a broader arena of policy. With that could come the potential expansion of membership from 5 to 7 members. And also, there's the question about whether the stipend is still appropriate for PCS members, given the advisory nature. I guess this is my last part. Lastly, wanted to sort of talk about tonight and what some proposed next steps would be. Tonight is really philosophical in nature and meant to elicit discussion on these philosophical ideas and changes. There are technical changes that would be needed to really memorialize some of this work. We're not proposing to have any of those technical changes tonight, but if there were changes that would be brought forward to the council, it would be in the form of a resolution as it relates to open space, and it would be an ordinance as it would relate to modifications to municipal code for PCS. So those would be the procedural pieces that would be a next step, but we're not proposing anything related to that tonight. So again, the purpose of tonight was to begin this philosophical conversation on roles and responsibilities. Very much interested in all of your thoughts, and hope to answer any questions that you have.
Well, you've given us a fair amount of information, and I will say I'm really sorry that we did not have this information written down to read ahead of time. I feel like it's a fair amount of information to absorb, and we are a group of very smart people And I am saddened that you didn't write this up ahead of time. I'm sorry to be so blunt, but as you know, a lot of us have been involved for a long time, and we're very committed to this community. And we feel very strongly about our roles on open space and PCS. So I would like to suggest if you could write this up for us and give that to us. I think that will make it easier for us as individuals, as committee and commission together to really look at this. So I'm just gonna put that out there. I usually don't go first, and I apologize to everybody. I just felt like I needed to kind of share my first take. I'm glad you're bringing this to us, but it's a lot to absorb, and I'm gonna call on Kim next. Thank you.
Thank you, Nance. Thanks, Jason. I missed it, I think. I was listening very intently, as I think we all were, that you said there were 2 paths for OSAC, but you only mentioned one, which was the Friends of the American Canyon organization. I didn't catch the second option or second path.
Sure. What I meant by the 2 pathways was one pathway for PCS and one pathway for OSAC. I didn't mean 2 for open space. I'm sorry for the confusion.
Okay, thank you. I share what Nance is saying about it is a lot of information. And it's quite, it's, well, I'll use the term drastic. Well, as far as, significant. Maybe I should not use the word drastic. I don't want to engage in hyperbole, but definitely significant. Concerns or proposals, or even at the level, even at the philosophical level, it is a lot to consider.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Kathy. Kathy, then Barry.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify, what was the exact direction that City Council gave you for this particular new venture?
Sure. It's a couple of things. They want to, number 1, improve the interface with you all. And number 2, they want to improve the functionality of these bodies as it relates to staff and how staff implements council's policy direction.
And my second question is what's the time frame or the process that you see this going through for it to look in the way that you're describing tonight?
To be honest, we don't have a time frame. There isn't a there's not a deadline. There's not a fiscal year deadline or a calendar year deadline. There isn't a deadline per se. As I mentioned, this is the beginning of a journey. And so, we don't have a deadline. The council didn't say by X date, do this. They said, we want changes. We want a better, more effective use. And, that time frame, could play out in months. And so it doesn't, we don't have a specific council meeting we're targeting. We haven't started drafting any of the technical changes or anything like that. This is the beginning of a conversation.
Anything else, Kathy? Okay, so Barry and then Karina after Barry, thanks.
Okay, so just for full disclosure, I met with Jason and Ali at their request this past week on some of these issues. And I provided what, I guess I have background from being on OSAC when it first started, how it got started. And as I get older, I feel I find there's fewer and fewer people that have that institutional memory that were there. Earth Day's coming up, April 24th up in Napa. And I was at a committee meeting yesterday. I looked around, Earth Day was 50 years old in 2020. So it's celebrating And I looked around and I think there was only one other person in the group that was at least 50 years old. It was kind of interesting. But some of my specific questions might be with the nonprofit, maybe a comment, not a question, but I think it's always great to get more people involved. If we can get more people involved with this. Nonprofits are kind of tough to, it's a lot of work to become a 501c3 and do all that. And it can be difficult to recruit people if the eggers are helping and they're donating the land and you get some people like that. I think that could be a good thing if you get more people involved and you could bring in some new energy, you know, maybe similar to the way the ACCPF is formed and brought some great high energy folks with great ideas. When the Friends of American Canyon Open Spaces first formed, it was constructed mainly by Mark Joseph, because I met with him and I met with him on the issue of the Newell Open Space becoming part of the Ridge Trail, but then I was also interested in the wetlands, and Matt Plate and others were interested too. And then Mark brought in other people. He brought in a couple of horse equestrians, Nicole Shores and Marcy Harris. And he brought in Rick Thien, who was a duck hunter. And I don't know where he got Nance from.
I just showed up.
Yeah, okay. But he brought those together. But what occurs to me is that we met with the city manager and Randy Davis. Randy was the parks director. And I asked Randy one time, are you coming to these meetings because you want to, or did Mark make you? And he said, well, Mark made me, but I don't mind. He liked the open space stuff. So, but we met on a regular basis. And I think that with the nonprofit, I think there does need to be some regular scheduled communication where people can reach the city manager's office. I've had people tell me they sent a note to the city manager and were less than satisfied with the request or maybe didn't get a request, an answer. So I think there needs, if we're not going to city council, that we're going to somebody who can solve the problem. So if there's a gate open and cattle are getting out and I hear about it, that there's a line of communication with volunteers that are out there so they can address these issues. I think that's all I have for the moment.
Rena?
Thank you. So I keep calling you Director Holly, but I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to call you.
I'm the city manager. You can call me Manager Holly.
Manager. Oh, okay. Thank you. I want to be do all the pomp and circumstance here. So Manager Holly, I'm also have to echo what Chair Matson said, and I feel like this came out of left field. There's a lot to handle. For me, it's incredibly helpful. I'm a second language person, so it's incredibly helpful to have this information ahead of time so I can actually process it in my head and try to do a lot of translation in my head prior, so I'm a little bit prepared. And so there are things that I might have missed, and so I would greatly appreciate it if you could in the future give us a heads up. At least for me, give me a heads up. I'm a little bit concerned because you're saying you don't have a timeline, and council has potential changes every 2 years. So if we don't have a timeline, then for example, this November, you never know, you might have a different council. So that priority might change. That's one thing. And the other thing is I'm extremely concerned, and I've said it many times to a lot of people in this group. I feel like this little city that could is oversaturated with nonprofits. And so you're adding another nonprofit that is gonna compete with all the other wonderful organizations that we have. I mean, they're all wonderful. I appreciate all of them, but you know, we're not a big city. We're a small city, and you know, adding more and more nonprofits, and I might be wrong. I just need some more explanation on how this new nonprofit can be sustainable. So that's what I have for now. Thank you so much for what you said. Thank you.
Thank you, Karina. Kristen's next.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. And I agree with Chair Madsen. This is a whole lot to digest for OSAC, and certainly for me as a member of PCS. It's just a lot, and it would be good if it was all written down and we had a little more time to go over it with a fine-tooth comb. So that would be my suggestion.
Thanks. Next. Oh, sorry, Scott, I missed your hand there. Scott.
No worries. Yeah, thanks, Manager Hawley, for that. I had a couple questions. I know you mentioned, and some have brought up the timeline, although there may not be a formal timeline. Do you have a particular timeline that you're trying to adhere to, you know, personally or for the city, as you try to get your agenda worked on as well?
No. What I'll say is this topic is not even on our council we keep an agenda forecast for the city council. You know, it's like a working agenda. It's updated almost daily when we expect to bring things to the city council, and we've got it planned out kind of through October. You know, it's not everything that we're doing, but we're trying to map out different council meeting dates, and this topic's not on there. So, you know, it's not on a place where I even have a calendar date in mind.
Got it. And so it sounds like it is quite in the beginning stages of thought and exploration. And so some of the other questions I have is if there is an idea or a preliminary idea of who or how members here would be involved in the organizing and structure of the new organization. And so that would be one. And then also is the initial idea is that this Friends organization is being set up to spearhead kind of the maintenance and monitoring and even some of the restoration of the open spaces. And so is it kind of a conduit of fundraising from more of a grant supporting kind of organization that takes the burden off city staff to do that, and then enables volunteer efforts to be conducted, you know, say using a nonprofit's own, say, liability insurance, so that it kind of removes the city from being able to or maybe some of the red tape, if you will, for being able to conduct those events out on the open spaces.
Yeah, I think all those things are exactly right, committee member Artist. The notion of creating this nonprofit is to it kind of recognizes where we are with both open spaces, and that the purposes for which that group was originally formed, which was to get access to. And like I said before, it's largely mission accomplished. There are accesses to both locations. What is needed now is much more in the day-to-day maintenance, the day-to-day caretaker and stewardship. There aren't a lot of policy making activities that the council needs input on these two spaces now that we have access to it. What is needed is really, you know, day-to-day tasks and implementation. And so, you know, the idea in discussions with the Jaeger representatives and their idea to donate what is, I think, more than 300 acres of land, if my memory is right, to the city adjacent to no open space. What I told them was thank you very much. We really very much appreciate that offer. And I'm not trying to kick a gift horse in the mouth, but we need a vehicle that comes with that donation that can help us take care of that space, because we didn't get one with the new open space, and we've struggled in the beginning with access, and ever since we got access, we've struggled with maintenance. And so we love the idea and we love the gift, but if you don't give us a way to take care of it, we're going to struggle. There's no reason to think our struggles will improve with additional responsibility. And so, you know, that's where some of this conversation too is around, okay, what are some vehicles for doing that? And seeing a lot of the success that the Parks Foundation has had around fundraising, and knowing the group that's available to help assist and help us form this 501(c)(3), that's a lot of the goal, is to create that conduit. The city cannot go out and hold fundraisers and galas and fundraise for stuff, but a nonprofit can. And that's one of the big distinctions with what we can. In addition, you know, the work around tasks, implementation, and maintenance and things like that is the kind of stuff you do during the day on a Saturday with a larger group of volunteers. Mm-hmm. It's not the kind of thing that happens on a Wednesday night at 6:30. And so we really are trying to remove some of the bureaucracy and also some of the limitation. There are only 5 members of the Open Space Committee, but you could envision this Friends of Marin Canyon Open Space would have more than 5 people, and I'm pretty confident it will. You know, I think also this is not something that could have happened in 2005, but when there was no access to Newell, it wasn't in people's minds. We had to have gone through the process we went through first to get to where we are today, right? We had to go through the process of finding access. We had to go through the process of the trails and getting those developed in order to put that place in the forefront of the community's mind. And we had to grow to a bigger city. We are now a city of 21,000 people and growing larger. You know, in 2005, we had a much smaller population, and New Open Space was an imagination. Very few people, if any, had ever been there. And now it's quite the opposite. So we're now in that place where I'm very confident in the community and their interest in being able to be a part of an organization like this, whether it be actually on the board itself or just a member of the organization. There are, I don't know how many members of the American Canyon Parks Foundation they are. There's an annual fee with being a part of that foundation. And then there are, of course, the board of directors. But I think there will be a lot of residents of Marin Canyon, and others. You wouldn't even have to be a resident of Marin Canyon to be a member of the Friends of Marin Canyon Open Space. And I think there are a lot of members of the community who'd be interested in that, who'd be interested in fundraising or contributing fundraising efforts. And I do think there would be a pool of folks who'd be interested in being on the board and providing that direction and some of that leadership around volunteering for caretaking activities, et cetera. In addition, the city itself, you know, would have a liaison. We would have, you know, an ex officio staff person, you know, on the board to ensure that communication is happening. And just like we do with the Parks Foundation, for example, we sometimes give money to the Parks Foundation to do stuff, things that we don't want to do with our own staff or aren't very good at doing that they are. We provide funding directly to them. And so we're able to do that. And I could envision a similar scenario with this kind of a group where they would have an idea about wanting to do some maintenance activity or some educational activity. We would think it's a great idea. And instead of trying to develop a staff resource around it, we would, you know, pay that group to do it. So those are some of the ideas around it.
Yeah. I mean, I hear exactly what you're saying regarding kind of the land donation is having worked in a land trust and then also just nonprofits for quite a while. The thing that's always overlooked is with the land donation is that long-term monitoring and sustainability that comes with it. And it's always a hard thing to come by. And so that is something I understand full well, having been in it. But I look forward to kind of hearing more and what others are saying, because I haven't quite had the experience on OSAC as others. And so I don't quite come with all the history of that. So I look forward to going through the rest of the documents that was provided and listening to everyone else. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I've got hands up from Gina, Kim, Kathy, Barry, and Clarence. If it's okay with Kim, Kathy, and Barry, can I call on Gina and Clarence first, since they haven't spoken yet? And then we'll go, so I'll start with Gina and then Clarence, and I'll move over to Kim, Kathy, Barry. So Gina, floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Mattson. Okay, so, how to say my yoga breathing, because this is a lot to digest, a lot of transformation. But I like to say that there is no other constant in life other than change. And every time there's a change, it's an opportunity. And so I'm excited for the opportunity for change and growth, and these two groups actually doing more for our city, and kind of removing some of the bureaucracy. And I'm super excited to not have 4-hour Thursday night meetings anymore, which is how my experience on PCS started. So those things make me very excited. And I am sort of getting a picture. I'll start with OSAC because that's like, even though I'm not a member of OSAC, I am kind of getting excited for you guys because what I'm hearing and what I'm picturing is that they would be a nonprofit similar to ACCPF and have a board of directors, have board members, and then I don't know, this might be getting too much into the weeds, but maybe take over the reindeer run out at the wetlands, be in charge of patching the holes out at wetlands, be in charge of, extending the bike trail so that it connects from here all the way to Yountville, getting the trail more passable up at Newell, and keeping it passable year round, having a trail run up there for fundraising, having a mountain bike ride up there for fundraising. And I think that we do have a lot of people in our community because I'm out there a lot. My husband's out there a lot. We're out at the wetlands a lot. I'm around the neighborhood a lot. And our community gets outside. We love to get outside. So I think that we do have a lot of opportunity there. And that makes me excited. My only question about the OSAC transition would be, would they continue to have meetings in this format, or would they hold their own board meetings with a city liaison if necessary, maybe quarterly?
They would, as envisioned, they would have their own meetings, much like the Parks Foundation does. And the city has a non-voting ex officio member of that committee, or that board, I should say. But they define when they want to have meetings, how frequently, and whom would be on that. Okay. They not the city.
Thank you for that clarification. And then to get a little bit into PCS, that I'm not quite wrapping my brain around that concept as easily. So I'm just curious a little bit about what other advisements what other types of advisements other than around parks and programming you're referring to. I'm curious about that. Would Director Akita continue to run the meetings in this format, and then again have like quarterly meetings with council? And would we get more specific individual roles as PCS members? Would it be like, this commissioner is working on this project, this commissioner is working on this project, so there's, not maybe so much overlap, so we could be as productive as possible. So those are my questions about PCS.
Sure. So if I can kind of recap them in reverse. The main thing that would first be needed is to really develop some bylaws that would help craft some of these understandings and perspectives. As far as, again, individual work, individual projects, or things other than what I identified on master planning, I haven't gone so far as to figure out other ones. And again, this would come from the city council. So I did not get into detailed conversations with the council about what exactly they want. In general, my experience with them is they want good, solid, thought out recommendations. They want recommendations that match what the industry is doing and what the profession is doing elsewhere. And they want, a thoughtful evaluation of what a best practice is. And then they're going to contribute their perspective and, add on some things or what have you. They're probably not in the mood to write the bylaws or to develop all of the lists themselves. What they would expect from me is to organize this group and to bring to them something that was well thought out and call it 90% done, and let them put the finishing touches on it or blessing on it, and that's their preferred method. They don't want to be doing the drafting and the deep dive with that to begin with. But they are comfortable. If we're not able to bring something, they would do that. But that's again part of what they hire me to do, is to bring that best practice forward. So what I would envision with this group is to kind of create that, to kind of understand the shell that exists in a normal framework, and then give them specific examples of the kinds of activities that might be applicable, and then to write them down as either part of an annual conversation with the council, or specifically in the bylaws as it relates, potentially to practices. And that would be a great subject for a follow-up meeting of this group.
So we'll be kind of writing our own bylaws and then presenting it to council. Is that what you're saying?
It's a lot of what we do. I mean, a lot of what the city council hires its professional staff to do is to research, to identify, and to have the education on best practices and industry practices, right? And so we bring materials forward that are well thought out, and then what they do is cross-reference it with what they hear from their constituents, right? They're in the listening business, and they hire the professionals to develop the ideas that are in support of what they're hearing from the community. And that's where the cross, not the cross-pollination, but the crossing of the two paths happens. Is, we're engaged in the policy work and that research. They're the ones who have 3,000 ears that are talking to them, in the form of votes and whatnot. And so they're the big listeners of the community, and we are bringing the professional side of it to us. And that's where the frame of reference happens. And so, they say, hey, look, you are on track. This is what I'm hearing. Or, what I'm hearing is a different track. Let's go over to that other track. But they don't then follow us all the way back to the station and lay the rails for us. They're making sure that the track that we're bringing forward lines up with what they're hearing from all the constituents. So they're not interested in, writing all that and all of that detail. They're expecting their professional staff to do that. And what we would want to do with this group is to bring forward some ideas for change that involve both the professional staff and the community, the community members here, to say, hey, look, this is what we brought together. If I had to bring something myself that was just, these ideas, it's going to come with one sort of sentiment. If it comes with a group sentiment where we've done work and then have had some more buy-in, then the council is much more well received with that kind of exercise.
So would our 2 additional members be city staff, or would they be community members?
It's up for discussion. They wouldn't be staff. So staff would never be a member of the Citizens Advisory Committee. It would always be a member of the community. And if there was, if we thought it made sense to have a 6th and a 7th, then we would make that as part of a recommendation to council that, we think that the council would benefit and this committee would benefit from additional membership. I haven't really sort of weighed in my mind on whether that's a good idea or not, but I wanted to put it out there as something that could be on the table, because there is nothing mandatory about 5 or 7. It was a kind of everything's on the table kind of approach. And so, beyond 7, I don't think would make sense, just to be, totally transparent. I don't think a 9 or 11 or 13 person committee would make sense for what we're talking about. But you could envision maybe 7 would make sense. And maybe there were some reasons why. I haven't delved into those details.
Okay. And just one more thing as I'm trying to continue to wrap my brain around this. Would PCS then be making recommendations to council for things like swim programming, and like if we're hearing from community members that swim lessons fill up too fast, or they need more nighttime lessons, or they want to start that spring softball league, or the baseball fields aren't being maintained? Would it be those types of recommendations in programming and community events? Is that what we're talking about, just to try and get an idea of something specific?
Not really. Honestly, the feedback loop, that kind of feedback loop about satisfaction of city services is best handled directly, right? So if folks in the community have suggestions or would like or complaints or different ideas, that's best handled directly, at the staff level. And when the community doesn't feel like they got any kind of response, or they didn't like the response they got from staff, then it's going to the council and saying, look, I'm a member of the public. I have this perspective. I think we should have more classes, or I think our classes should be at 6 o'clock instead of 8 o'clock, or what have you. that's not a policy. In the context of policy would be, you know, the advisory committee saying, you know, again, getting back to the, you know, equitable access. So we need to make sure we're having equitable access for everyone, or that we are, or that we have, you know, a strategy around our design standards, right? We see from a very big picture that we've had 3 playgrounds be replaced and they haven't accommodated all users. So we need to make sure, we recommend that the council have a strategy that says, you know, have a design standard that accommodates all users. Not, you know, we recommend you fix Linwood Park tomorrow. That's not the, that's the, you know, that's the detail in the day-to-day piece that is, if there's a complaint about Linwood not having access, that complaint would come to the city organization and to staff who can hear the complaint and respond to the concerns. And if that's not satisfactory, you know, then it comes to me, and then ultimately to the city council, because we're able to articulate all of the reasons why the situation exists in a way that the committee members are not able to articulate that. But the council would appreciate the input from this body to say, you know, what are some strategies? We've heard a lot of complaints. You know, we don't know why we're hearing all these complaints. We would like this. It's a very emotional issue. There's people who feel like they're being denied access. We don't know why we're hearing these complaints. We'd like this committee to kind of help us with a strategy so that we don't have these complaints in the future. And so it becomes the feedback loop back to the committee saying, we're referring to you a way of improving strategies, or do we need to have a goal around this? Do we even have a goal around that would address some of the things we're hearing from the community? And so that's the council would then refer back the need for a goal, the need for a strategy, or what have you. So it's not specific situations or specific tasks that the council would refer. It's much more elevated discourse.
So more master planning and broader community goals.
Much higher level.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Okay, next is Clarence. Thank you.
Okay. My thoughts are this. This is a good conversation to start and a good journey to be on. And there's no better set of colleagues that I would, you know, want to be on this journey on. But I also note, this is an existential conversation, meaning we're talking about the very form and existence of these bodies. Just in passing, we've, you know, there's ideas that need to be fleshed out in much greater detail. OSAC turning into a nonprofit, PCS expanding membership, doing bylaws, and maybe doing a more of a community service focus. You know, these are big ideas, and you know, I just want to make sure, you know, we need to make sure that we have a process that's agreeable for all of us. For one, these bodies have done a tremendous amount of work over decades, and we don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? So I'm seeing this as, you know, we're going from the general, which is council's direction, to specifics. And, you know, I know that Manager Holly and Director Aikida, the lion's share of the work in going from general to specific is on your shoulders. You know, I know that. I just want to make, you know, let's be mindful of, you know, having all of us, and I know it's a 3-ring circus at times, I get it. Having all of us as part of that conversation as we're going from the general to the specific. And the other part of this, I think would raise my comfort level greatly, would be I guess just making sure that council, in making this general these general suggestions, knows that as an existential conversation that has just been started, there's going to be changes. You know, are those the changes that, you know, they want, and that they, you know, that are those the changes that they actually want, or is this a freight train that they didn't realize they started moving? You know?
No, I think to answer your point, first, Clarence, that the changes that the only changes that will be made are changes that they want and changes that they majority end up voting on. So they will answer that question if it's brought to them and at the appropriate time that a conversation is brought to them and voted on. So in some sense, we'll know by the action they take, and it's my job and everyone else's job is to inform them, and I do that with all issues, right? My job is to inform them as to ramifications of a decisions, all of the aspects of a decision. I try very hard not to shine light only on the good things and not the bad things, right? I try very, very hard to provide a very open picture and provide a recommendation where appropriate, or sometimes I don't. I listen for their recommendation. So I do think they are aware, and they very much want to have, again, that better linkage. They very much want to be in the place that says, we want this from the advisory committee. We've committed XYZ resources to that effort. And this is what we're wanting from this process. And so that it is very important to them. And, again, we have not got into details with them. I do regularly brief them all, and we've talked about snippets of this. But I have not given them this entire conversation because I wanted to bring it to this group, to bring hopefully some consensus around some of the ideas. I don't debrief with them and have deep dives with them on issues individually. And we certainly haven't had a deep dive with this, as a full council.
Okay. I suppose moving forward, there's going to be more specific PCS oriented meetings regarding this, as well as OSAC meetings regarding these, and then we'll all come back together for a general, umbrella discussion, much like we're having today.
Yeah, I mean, we can get into some next steps. At this point, when you mentioned it is existential, it is also, as much as we don't have a calendar, I don't have a deadline, I don't have some date that we're working towards. This is also the top priority for this group, being able to chart a path for the future. We're not going to be going down 3 separate paths, the path that we were on for OSAC, the path we're on for PCS, and then some hypothetical other path that we may or may not be on with the other groups. We're not going to be exploring multiple pathways in that regard. This is the most important issue facing these groups. So we're going to be focusing a lot of our energy on this. And so the next step, at least in my mind, is for us to go back to take my remarks and to kind of my remarks, you can't really see, some of it are written and some of it are like bullet points. So I'm gonna have to refine them a little bit. But what I'll probably end up doing is putting together kind of a memo to these bodies that are kind of based on my remarks, and to send that over again with the background material that we sent yesterday. But then really our next meeting will need to be a combined meeting. There would be no reason to sit, again, having separate conversations with these 2 bodies. In my mind anyway, our next step would be to have another joint meeting and kind of talk about some of these details, get some more of these questions asked, and to go into further detail. At the end of the day, like I said, we are trying to reshape this aspect of the organization. And so continuing down the pathways that we're on is not what we're going to be doing. I do want to bring this back together and hammer out some new ideas, get some more questions answered, have the group the ability to review the information we prepared, and have more dialogue and to figure out what some next steps would be after that.
And sorry, one last thing. Would there be a built into this? There would be public comment. Yes.
Yes, these are public meetings, and I don't know that we have anyone tonight, but yes, all these are public meetings and public comment. Yeah.
No, I'm actually fairly sure that that folks are viewing this. Some of our other colleagues out there with great interest. So That's all for me. Thank you.
Thanks. We're going to circle back to Kim first next.
Thank you, Chair Mattson, again, and thank you, Manager Holly. I wanted to say, Manager Holly, that I know that this, I appreciate the opportunity to contribute to these changes, to this new vision. I agree with the previous two commissioners' comments that there's a lot of opportunity here. Change does produce opportunity, and I am definitely not a fan of bureaucracy. So that's putting it lightly. So I really do see a lot of potential here. And I understand a lot of the reasoning that has been presented here, given the history and the trajectory of these two bodies. So, and my main comment is really a comment of gratitude, for, including us, and also respecting the history of these organizations, these bodies, and what they've contributed to the community. I'm wondering, when you write up the memo, if you could include also the financial implications, sort of cost benefit analysis. I'm not a fan of that either, talking too much about money, but I am curious, and I've been for a long time. I mean, sitting here in this meeting just now and in the OSAC meetings, there are 3 staff persons who are sitting in these meetings, these 4 to 5 hour long meetings. And it seems to me, and it always has, that's an expenditure. That's a resource that's being expended. And I'm not sure if that's the most useful way to use staff resources and staff time. So I'm just wondering how much of a role the financial aspect is playing, because I know before we've talked about, the transition, COVID-19 has, put a lot of financial pressure on the city and the city's budget. And I know I can understand that a lot of this is more existential, as has been stated, and I agree with, but it seems like some of it is also fiscal and pragmatic, and just sort of practically thinking about, how to best function, how these organizations, how these bodies can best interface, as you said, with city council and the city as a whole. So I'm just wondering if you wouldn't mind being able to map out some of that for us in the memo, because I'd be curious myself to know how much, what role that has played in the city council's recommendation.
You're exactly right, Kim, with your committee member Esther Williams, with your points, and I will include some of that information in the memo.
Kathy?
Thank you. So I definitely understand the need to refine and the potential for having additional funding source as far as the open space and guidance in that such. I'm just wondering, and I know that you don't have a timeline, you talked about next steps, putting together a memo, but what would our future, we have calendared meetings for the year. So what do you foresee those looking like? Is business as usual? Is it working on this? And then I also do see that it seems definitely like 2 different directions. So having us all together might not be the best use of all of our time. If you're looking at one group and talking about the transition into a nonprofit and what that might look like, and the other group looking at roles and responsibilities. I know bylaws are out there for clearly other commissions that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So you're not sitting there writing things. So anyway, I definitely see wondering about what our future meetings would look like. And then also, it does seem like 2 different directions also. So just wondering a clarification on that.
Commissioner Margolotti, you bring up a really good point. we had come at this with the assumption that we ought to have this group together jointly to engage in this conversation. And that if we actually felt like if we now split everybody apart and went down these separate paths separately, it would feel that there would, group members, folks who are here would feel like they had something to contribute or being not able to contribute, and it would be viewed as divisive almost. But if this group is feeling like kind of what I'm hearing you say is, if these two separate pathways, if it makes sense to have PSCS focus on its pathway and OSAC focus on its pathway, and those having us not sit together actually makes more sense. If that was kind of the concurrence of the group, we're not opposed to that. We just had came at it assuming that would be viewed as divisive if we had proposed that, I guess. And none of this was meant to be divisive. And so I don't know how the group feels. Our thought was to schedule the April meeting as a joint one to continue this conversation. We hadn't picked whether it was going to be the first week of April or the third week of April. But anyway, if this group thinks that having separate meetings is a better, more efficient way to do it, we're not opposed to that. And I don't really want to leave it up to the group to get your perspectives on it, because we felt that would be viewed as divisive, like I said.
I guess just to clarify, it's hard to know whether I'm not intending to be divisive, but whether it's effective use of time depending on the direction, and it's not really clear right now. And maybe there would be a time that would be appropriate, and maybe it's not the time right now. So I'm still a little unclear on the next step and what that's going to look like.
Maybe what we do is we schedule our next meeting, and we put that as an issue at the next meeting, like calendaring out some subsequent dates like that. That'll be one of the exercises in that next meeting, because at that next meeting, you will have a memo from me. You'll have the background material, some of the information that Kim had asked for. You have a chance, to review some of this material. And maybe at that meeting, what we can do is to say, look, we're going to, again, have separate meetings at this point because we've got some questions answered, or we want to continue to meet jointly. And we can maybe next time just meet as a group, and then from there make a decision.
Kathy, do you have anything else done? Okay. Barry and Tara, I'd like to jump in after Tara, and then Kristen had her hands up. So actually I'm gonna go to, sorry, Barry, Tara, Kristen, and me. Thank you. Barry?
Okay, I love these formats because I hear other comments and it stimulates me to think of other things. I've got 4 things that come up. I don't think we need a long discussion on them. Number 1, the OSAC is also the Bike Advisory Committee that's been designated by City Council. And it could be if we had a bicycle committee like Napa Bike in American Canyon or someone like that, then that could be designated. But you have to have one because it's required by state legislation for new road and trail projects that it be reviewed by a bicycle committee. And currently OSAC has been appointed. So if you're not gonna have a OSAC, if you're gonna have a nonprofit, you could maybe make them or someone else, but you'd need one. Number 2, I mentioned that the communication, you need a forum. And I gave an example of complaints, but it's not just complaints, it's also ideas too. OSAC committee has heard from people who had input on light pollution for, stargazing and that, herbicide use, Felidae, the people who came out and put the cameras up they study cats, mountain lions, bobcats, and that resulted in the trail cameras that are up at Newell. The Boy Scouts came in and wanted to do an orienteering project, climate change advocates, people who were opposed to a possible trail that we were going to do down by Kimberly Park. So right now with Open Space Committee, you have a public forum that meets at a regular basis that has public rules. So everybody can come in, they can do public comment, and they can speak. If you've got a nonprofit setting their own rules, the city may not have much control over how often they meet or what kind of things are discussed. I don't know if you want people going to a city council meeting. They could go maybe directly to you or the parks, to Jason or the parks director, or there be a public comment in city council. And I don't know if city council wants to handle those kinds of things. Maybe they do, but at least in the open space committee, there can be a forum. And sometimes I think that saves city council a little bit work, that these things can be worked out. They may not even have to reach the level of city council, or maybe when it does, it reaches city council with a recommendation from the open space committee. So it makes it easier for city council to say, okay, let's let the orienteering, Boy Scouts set an orienteering course up at Newell Preserve. And so I think it helps the city in some ways that you do have a formal committee. Number 3, I think that we want to include the American Canyon Community Parks Foundation in any discussions about a nonprofit. We don't want to leave them out of that. They've created a very successful nonprofit, and I definitely would like them to be part of any conversation, rather than have the Eggers come in and say, well, we've got our nonprofit. Let's get all of the city involved in this, and especially people who have demonstrated their success. And then lastly, I just want to push back against this idea that someone's going to give us 300 acres, but we're concerned that they're not giving us any money. The city of Boulder, Colorado, I think in the 1960s, passed a measure to tax themselves to purchase open space land all around the city. And they did. And now they've got this wonderful community where you can walk outside your door and go hiking up the hills. The city of American Canyon has never done anything like that, not even close. We kind of brag about the fact that we have Newell open space and the wetlands, but the city really never did anything to purchase that. It didn't cost them anything to buy Newell Preserve. They didn't think about it or say, hey, maybe we need to do this. The wetlands, the city did put some money into studying it and feasibility study, but a lot of that came from the open space district. So the city hasn't exactly been a leader on this. And I would hate for the city to say, we're worried about this 300 acres and not the money to pay for it. I just think that that's really a wrong way to look at it. They don't make land anymore. You can't buy any more land. The gift of 300 acres would be a tremendous gift to us to add on to the Newell Preserve. And I think about this in terms of the Vine Trail too. The Vine Trail is creating a lot of trail through the whole Napa Valley, but some of the local jurisdictions are saying, well, you need to give us some money to operate it. And the Vine Trail they've got $1 million maintenance fund they're putting away for an endowment to do maintenance, and they're working in partnership with the various agencies about it. But from my point of view, it's to our benefit to have that land. There's no way we would be able to purchase it if we didn't receive it. We could maybe purchase it now, but once it's gone, it's gone. If you've got private estates up there, then it's gone. And so to me, it's priceless over the long term. And the idea of maintaining it to me is pennies. And if you're looking at the value of it, and I've said this to our open space committee, I've talked to the PCS committee about this. But Janelle Selleck told us at the last fundraiser for ACCPF that her family originally was only going to stay in American Canyon for 3 years. You're going to save some money and then move to somewhere like Colorado. But around that time, the open space, Newell open space opened to public access, and the wetlands opened to public access. So that was a big factor in their decision to stay here in American Canyon. And then what happens is Janelle Selleck is instrumental in helping found the ACCPF. And now they're raising $200,000 or $300,000 at their annual dinner and partnering with the city on the Wetlands Echo project. Echo Wetlands, but also the stuff like the storybook. So now if a young couple comes in American Canyon and goes out to Shenandoah Park and walks around and sees the storybooks there, then maybe they say, hey, this is kind of a cool community. I'd like to live here. So then we get the positive benefits from them. If they bring their energy in here, they contribute to nonprofits, their kids go to school here, maybe their kids become leaders in the community. So my point is that the value of having that open space is kind of incalculable. It includes all of the contributions that people would make because they chose to live here. it's the value of it is in the character and the caliber of people who choose to come and live in American Canyon because they like what's going on here. And that helps all of us. So if city council's looking for it on a ledger and, you know, oh, well, it's costing us this much, but we're not getting any money back from it. I just think that's, it's not the best thinking because open space is incredibly valuable in terms of what kind of a community you have. And that affects all of us. So those are my comments.
Thanks. Okay, Tara?
Yeah, so I'd like to add on to what Barry was saying. I agree about the Jaeger property, especially with the development that's going to be going on and removing the vineyards on 29, and we're losing all that beautiful scenery. You know, I believe that the city should take it as open space, and that way it could be protected. At least that hillside there wouldn't be developed. There isn't, I mean, we're a pretty small community, and I feel like that's kind of our treasure is our parks and our open spaces. And I think we could use all that we could get. I do wish, going back to the main topic of the meeting, that we had some more options to rattle around with. I do still feel the initial feelings of shock and not realizing something like this was about to take place tonight. And I would like to have kind of understood what maybe some options could have been with the Parks Foundation. You know, I mean, I do understand the idea of, you know, making a more efficient government, and I do believe there's a lot of waste in government. And, you know, I'm open to the idea that there could be some improvements. At the same time, I feel a loss when I look back to a lot of the open space meetings over the past several years and how many ideas came from relationships that open space members themselves had with outside agencies, and projects that never would have been done had that committee not been there, and those, you know, those ideas created. For example, Barry's brought many of those to the table, and a lot of the projects that have happened out there were either no charge to the city or very little. For example, the RCD project with the rolling dips. I'm pretty sure Barry was the one that brought that idea. I don't think that it was brought to us. I feel like I look at this panel and all of these members are very engaged in the community, and they have the experience of living here, and they're the ones that use these parks and open spaces and have the kids that are involved in the programs, and really, you know, paved the way. And you know, I do find this a bit heartbreaking, and I know that sometimes, you know, there's pains with growing, and, you know, maybe that's just what this is, but I definitely need more time to absorb this and think about this and how I really feel about it. And I guess that's all I have to say for now.
Thank you. Kristen?
Yeah, I really appreciate this discussion. It's cleared up a lot for me. I like the idea of having a greater opportunity to make recommendations, certainly to the council. At the same time, it's raised questions for me, as I'm sure it has for all of us. I like your suggestion, Manager Holly, of maybe getting together again, both groups, but I don't think, for me anyway, it's not divisive to think about separating after that. And since these are two really separate suggestions, I would rather do that. So thank you for that idea.
Thanks. Now that I've had time to get over my shock of when Jason called me on Friday to, let me know about the agenda, and we had a very brief conversation, and I purposely kept an open mind and we really talked about just the idea of more policy driven. We talked very briefly because I was on my way out of town to do something, but really focusing on policy driven versus the day to day. And, I'm sitting here thinking about our roles as committee and commission members and commissioners, and how we have worked together or separately over the years with council or not with council and with staff. I think we've had both bodies have had a lot of policy work we've done over the years. And we both still, I think, have a long list on our parking lot of policies or goals to work through. So I don't want to lose sight of that. I also don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And what I mean by that is both bodies were put into place by the council, and only the council can dissolve either body or decide how to change it. So I like the idea of us meeting again together next month. And I have more to say after that, but, and then perhaps going to council right after that, so that we don't spend a lot of time working on how we're gonna possibly do this and not going to council right away to hear, oh, you guys are totally off base, let's have, let's have their input into it. I'm sure they all have their own ideas of how they'd like to change things or not change things. And give me a second, I had one more part of this. It's not easy starting a nonprofit. When Jason Hughes talked about Friends of American Canyon Open Space, I looked at Berry Square and went, wait, this is how we started. And then I guess tied to that is we don't have a lot of bandwidth in our community in terms of our nonprofits are small, and it's, we compete with each other. We try not to compete with each other, but often it's, trying to figure out, okay, whose territory is which and all that stuff. And in terms of ACCPF, and they're in the midst of major capital campaign to do the Eco Center, starting a nonprofit, the city asking somebody to start a nonprofit. I mean, that's basically what's happening. At the same time, I'm not sure how that would play. So I'm concerned about taking energy away from a strong partnership the city's already developed with ACCPF about the Eco Center, how that would all work and how would it stretch us. But I wanted to go back to how Jason presented everything. And I do appreciate, now that I've kind of absorbed all that in, how, just like I think Karina said, is, being able to look at it and read it and absorb it really does help a lot. And I know that we had times when we would race up to an open space meeting, and whoever the park director would hand us a stack of, here's the staff report for this. We'd be like, really? Wait a minute, we could have looked at this ahead of time. And there is a lot of value in that. Let me look at my notes real fast to see if I have anything else. I want us to keep an open mind. Some of us in 2015 went through a very painful process of trying to determine, could we combine the two bodies, how we do that? And it was icky. It was hard to go through. I don't want to go through that again. I way don't want to go through that again. But I also want to make sure we're not just passing on responsibility, say, to a nonprofit. If we as a city haven't figured out how to maintain our open spaces and our parks, are we just asking somebody else to take our responsibility? And then how do we manage? I mean, who owns it? If we have a nonprofit that is responsible for renewal and the wetlands, is it really our property as a city anymore, or is it the nonprofit's property? So there's a lot of questions there, but I also want us to remember that we're all, we've all been appointed by the city council to serve our community. And I'm sorry if I'm getting emotional, but we all care. And I want to make sure that we continue to be as open with each other as possible as we work through this, because it's not one body over another, or, how we, I don't want to lose the history of the great things we've done. I know one document which would be really helpful is the Parks Needs Assessment and the general plan. I think most of us have seen all of those documents, but it's good to remember what the community, and then I don't remember when the needs assessment was done. It's probably a little outdated by now, but it gives us some view into what the community at the most recent time they were asked what they were looking for in terms of parks and recreation. So I second the idea of doing a joint meeting next time.
Let's at that next meeting, as far as when to engage with the council formally, let's put that on the agenda for that next meeting. I didn't want to come presupposed with the council meeting day. It deliberately isn't on the council, because then it kind of gives that appearance of a fait accompli, but it's not a bad idea to have a check-in with the council. And so, as we talk about being on the right track or not being on the right track, the council does appreciate, they don't like to see a lot of work on one track and then have to go, oh, you guys missed the track completely. So they don't like to have to do that. So they do appreciate a check-in. And maybe we can put that on the agenda for that next meeting. Is would the group be comfortable with going and because the flip side of it is we're not going to have necessarily a lot of the details worked out still, right? I mean, we'll still be in the formation stage. And so sometimes going to council when you don't have a lot of details, it's hard for them to process a little bit, but at the same time, maybe it does make sense. I think we can cross that bridge maybe at our next meeting, but to keep an open mind, like you said, and about what a next step would be, including, if it makes sense to gauge where we are with them.
Okay, and Barry's got his hand up.
Yeah, just in terms of open public comment, right? Because we had public comment at the beginning of the meeting on anything that's not on the agenda, but this was. So I was just wondering if you're going to open this to public comment sometime.
That's a really great point.
Actually, Liz just sent me a chat that we have some members of the public in the audience who would like to comment on this, and she was suggesting as soon as we've all made our last little round here, I would bring them in. So
Liz is way ahead of me as usual.
Liz is, on point. There you go. So before I bring public comment in, any additional comments, and I believe we can do another round back to all of us afterwards, just make sure that everybody has a chance to talk. I've got Karina. Go ahead, please.
So I appreciate folks that are, waiting for public comment, but again, I feel like we've done a disservice to our community because nobody knew that this was happening. So how can we really have public comment when people didn't even know that this was happening? Anyway, so I'm gonna leave it at that.
Good point, Karina. Thank you. I realized, Ali, we haven't asked you for your input on this, and I wonder if you'd like a chance to talk a little bit. No? Okay.
One thing I do want to make clear, whatever feelings or impressions or thoughts you all might have individually, please don't feel like this has anything to do with either Ali's hiring or her ideas or what have you. I wouldn't want you all to, for some reason, put some blame or what have you on her. These things we've been looking at for a while and evaluating for a while, and thinking about it, and had really no had no relationship to her hiring. So I wouldn't want you all to think the new person has come up with this idea and to blame the new person. So just please know that.
Oh, for the record, Jason and I had this conversation. I don't know how long you've been city manager, but it was not, if it wasn't your first week on the job, we talked pretty soon after that about, you know, committee, commission. And so I think he's been thinking about this for a while, but really, Ali, you know, you're our parks director, and I'm hoping you'll be able to, you know, participate in these conversations. I know you're you know, getting your feet on the ground, but you've had a lot of experience with other cities and different committees and commissions, and I'm hoping we can, you know, hear some of your experience and, you know, oh, this really didn't work and this did work, and, you know, so that's what I'm asking you.
I mean, I will just comment and say that in the short period of time of me being with the City of American Canyon, I am extremely impressed by our commission and our committee's talent. I think we have a strong group of individuals who are very passionate about our resources and about what we do here. And I think that's something you guys have done a lot for this city to bring us to where we are. I kind of have planted a little seed with both Nance, you and Barry. Like, I really think the best work is for me sometimes to get out of the way and really understand what you guys are trying to do. And I really enjoyed our hike up in Newell Open Space. I found that to be extremely valuable for somebody who is trying to manage and operate an open space. Being able to see the things that you guys see on a daily basis and having you be able to explain that to me and understand it without trying to create it on my own picture in my head. That to me was very valuable. And I think more things like that is what I would like to see, that continued partnership and relationship. So that way we can make sure that New Open Space is serving our community the best way that it can, as well as PCS. You know, day-to-day operations is extremely important. I know how the community feels about our programs and how important they are. But we have some big projects on the table. You know, we keep talking about the Newell Space Master Plan. We keep talking about the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. You know, how are we going to formulate that as a commission? How are we going to formulate that as a committee? And that's really where I feel that your value and your expertise can really help shape and guide that. And I will tell you, you know, programming is a part of that aspect. You know, what does our community want? And you guys have the ear of this community. You're well rooted in that. And I want you to know that your opinion and your expertise is much appreciated.
Great, thank you. And I'm sure we'll be hearing more from you. I wanted to just give you a chance to talk a little bit tonight. Thanks. Anybody else on committee commission comments before we open public comment? And Liz, do we have somebody?
If anyone in the audience would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand. Okay, Chair, we do have one public comment from Janelle Selleck. I'm going to go ahead and bring her in the meeting.
Great, thank you.
Hi, Janelle, are you with us?
I'm here. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we see you as a square with a green line around it.
Okay, good. Well, as I've got a kitchen full of dinner and kids behind me. So okay. In any case, probably better. The line is probably better. But hi, I'm Janelle Selleck, Executive Director of the American Canyon Community and Parks Foundation. Been listening with a lot of interest to the meeting tonight. I'm just so proud of the work of these committee and commissions. As a former commissioner, I recognize the desire to contribute and the passionate and committed work that you all have done. You know, the power of philanthropy is strong, and the connection to the philanthropic world gives a lot of a potential for nonprofit fundraising and support of parks and open space projects. And as executive director of the foundation, I just want to put it out there and say that we'd be very open, and we didn't, you know, enthusiastically participate in any strategic conversations about how we could potentially support or work together if the development of a new nonprofit is in the works. So thanks so much.
Great.
Thank you.
Liz?
Do we have any other public comments at this time? I think that's it, Chair Manson.
Great, thanks. Okay, so what, it sounds like are we all in on the idea of next month having another joint meeting? And would we be in person next month?
Believe it or not, we're going to be having our first council meeting on April 5th. That will be a hybrid meeting. The council themselves will be in person. Members of the public have two options. They can join the meeting and participate in council chambers, or they can participate by Zoom. It'll be our first hybrid meeting. We've got our fingers crossed the technology works, but we're going for it. And so it becomes a really good question. We have not set up our council chambers to have 10 people. We have not tried that, or more people with staff in it. We have not set that up. So I actually have no idea how that would work. My suggestion would be a Zoom meeting, only because of the number of people, and it's going to be hard enough for us to be able to get the council hybrid pulled off on April 5th. Trying to jump into if you remember way back when we had some of those joint meetings, it's extraordinarily awkward up at the dais to have that many people. So, I suppose we could set up the round tables, the square tables, and a rectangle on the floor of the council chambers. We had a staff meeting in there today. That could probably accommodate our group. It doesn't, you can still have public comment that way. The members of the public won't be able to hear the Zoom. The challenge is we wouldn't be able to do big tables in the main part of the chambers and then still have Zoom, because people participating on Zoom won't be able to hear. We don't have enough microphones. We don't have a microphone set up there. So if we did it just in person, we could probably pull that off. But that might be kind of abrupt for the community, because we've been doing everything else hybrid, and or we're doing everything else by Zoom, to then have a meeting where you only could be in public. I'm a little bit leery that may have a different sort of, I don't know. I just don't know how that would play out. I do selfishly, in looking at my calendar in April, I would much prefer April 6th as a meeting, as opposed to the normal Park and Rec date, which would be the following Thursday, the 10th, I believe, right? Or is my calendar off?
We're looking at the 6th, Jason, or the 14th of April.
Oh gosh, I'm in the wrong month.
And I was going to say, I prefer going with the PCS date to give them a chance to have the meeting on their usual night.
Yeah, I will not be here. I will not be here on the 14th. I can tell you already.
If I can interject, that week of April 11th is NVUSD spring break. So that might be very difficult to get the public involved and have full attendance of our group. I personally will be out of town as well.
I will too.
And I'll be out of town the week before on the OSAC day, so I would have to call in, which is fine if we're doing Zoom. But I was thinking it might be better.
How does a Zoom on March 6th look for everyone?
March 6th?
Sorry, April 6th. Jeez Louise, it is already March. I'm a month behind. It is my bad. How does a Zoom look on April 6th?
I'll be on the East Coast, so it's going to be a really late day for me. That's the only thing I'd say. Gina, you had your hand up. What was that, a yes or?
No, I was just going to do a thumbs up, but I clearly don't know how to do that.
Well, the thumb was vertical. Kristen?
I was trying to do the same thing, figure out how to say, yes, that's a good date for me.
Well, maybe we'll go this way. Is there anyone that Wednesday, April 6th does not work for?
It's really just a time switch issue for me.
Extra coffee, perhaps.
Yeah, if I drank it, that would be helpful. Yeah,
that's true. Okay, so then we will have. I'm going to kind of summarize next steps. So our next step will be to have a joint meeting on Wednesday, April 6th. Prior to that meeting, this whole group will receive a memo from me that will be basically my opening remarks and information. I'm going to polish it a little bit because I just had a bunch of bullet points in here, but will be a more narrative version of what I started with. And I'm going to resend the information that we republished the agenda with a little more linkage in my memo to what the attachments are. And we're going to include some information about some of the costs and that kind of thing that Kim was asking for. And we'll continue this conversation. A couple of the topics at that next meeting will be, thinking about some next steps from there. Do we want to connect with council? Do we want to, go to separate pathways as it relates to the more separate issues and that sort of a question. Also we'll send the parks needs assessment as one of the attachments, as another additional reference document. That may actually be a hyperlink because we may have to link it from our website. So I think it's a pretty big document. But regardless, we'll make that so that it's easy to find.
Hey, Jason, is there a way also, I know open space has kind of a parking lot document, and also we had, in terms of report on current grants and projects, I think it would be helpful to share that with everybody.
Yeah,
I don't know if PCS has something similar. That'd be helpful.
Sure. Let me look. Let's figure out what those documents are. We can include that. Sure.
Anything else that people want to see in the package for the next meeting?
Yeah, well, I agree with Nance. We actually have a list of to-do and projects that is being, I feel like it's been kicked down the side, but it's there. We made one. If we could bring that, that would be great. Thank you.
I don't know if it's possible or not, but I feel like it's really difficult to do the work that's necessary to move forward without some sort of an idea about a timeline. I mean, are we working on a 6-month deadline? Are we working on a 2-year deadline? Is really going to change how we go about this. So if there's any sort of direction from council or staff or otherwise around what that timeline might be, other than just an open timeline, that would be super helpful for me at least.
Okay, we can put some thoughts around that.
Probably more definition of the process too. I'm not sure if that was stated, but I mean, just defining it all would be helpful.
Okay.
Like the steps, like our meeting, then council, then whatever.
I guess.
Yeah, sounds good.
Sure.
Anything else?
We don't have anything else.
Okay. This is a great discussion. Thank you all for, given that we didn't know where we were going with this discussion, I think we did a great job kind of getting our heads around it, and I appreciate it. Kristen, do you have anything else to say on this topic before I move on to the management staff oral reports? We're trying to tag team a bit here, so hopefully.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it was a great discussion. Appreciate everyone's input.
Great, thanks. Okay, now management and staff oral reports. Would that be Jason or Ali?
Yeah, Chair, we don't have any other additional reports.
And then we have the commission committee comments and future items of consideration. If we could raise hands, and I'll just call by raised hands if people have things they want to share and items and it looks like Kathy is ready to lead us off.
Yes, I'm just putting on my board member hat for the American Canyon Community Parks Foundation, just to invite the community to our open house event that's on Sunday at the Boys and Girls Club. and it's from 4 to 6 p.m. So hopefully you can come and join us.
And we don't have to RSVP to that, right? Just show up.
Just come on down.
Thanks. Clarence, Karina, then Kristen. Clarence?
Hello. Oh, yes. All right. From the American Canyon Chamber of Commerce, the Meet Me in the Street event is back for June 8th, July 13th, and August 10th. If you were there over the past last summer, it was a pretty incredible event. So if you are a nonprofit or a chamber member, sign up for a table. So it would be a good opportunity for fundraising or just to promote your particular group. From the American Canyon Arts Foundation. So this Friday we're gonna go see this. The hard to see. The Napa lighted art. So real quick, we're meeting it on Friday. We're meeting at Downtown Joe's, and then from there we're gonna wander around downtown Napa, checking out this art. And if you haven't seen it yet, please, you're very welcome to join us. I'm sure that the members of the Arts Foundation will have plenty of interesting things to say as we walk around and view the art.
What time is that, Clarence? And it's meeting at Downtown Joe's?
We're meeting at Downtown Joe's at 5:30 for informal food and drinks. And then after that, we start our wanderings. And March 22nd, over at the American Canyon Welcome Center, March 22nd, Tuesday, from 5:30 to 7:30, we're having a youth art show, specifically middle school students who have contributed art. And it's at the Welcome Center right now, but this is basically a reception for the young artists and their families.
Great. Thanks, Karina.
So thank you, Chair Matson. So the American Canyon Little League opening day is March 12th. That we will have a parade with from T-ballers to the high school team will be there. It starts at 9 a.m. at the end of Lombard, at the cul-de-sac on Lombard, and just goes up Hess Road to Little League. It's just one block, but it's gonna be fun. We're gonna have the parade, games. You get to see the amazing T-ballers there. There's nothing funner than seeing a T-ball game. Seeing all those 4-year-olds trying to hit the ball is a lot of fun. We're gonna have a food truck, or the first AC's American Canyon first food truck, Taco Lambre, will be there. They're having a special menu, breakfast burritos, and then they're gonna have some other special stuff for lunch. So this can be your chance to come and try the new amazing food truck. Is really delicious. Then we're also gonna have a very special first pitch. We're gonna have Fran Lemos will be throwing the first softball pitch. I called her, she agreed. She even told me, is it okay to go on a walker? I said, I don't care on what you go. You just throw that first pitch. So she's really excited about that. She's been the neighbor of Little League. She lives across the street, but she's always been an amazing supporter of Little League. So come and see it. Then ACMS, African American Coalition. Everybody, Liz Lozano was really nice enough to send you the flyer. You got it on your mail. Hopefully I'll get a PDF next time. I wasn't able to get one on PDF, But so that's March 22nd via Zoom at 6:30 p.m. And the whole community is welcome to come and give us your take on how can we be more inclusive and how we can serve our African American students better. Also, my comments, this is the part we can do comments too, right, Chair?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I really feel strongly that these meetings need to be added to the Facebook posts, city announcements on Nextdoor, and emails to our community. I feel like it's a really disservice to our community that they're not informed that these meetings are happening. The city has 2 Facebook pages, one for specifically for Parks and Rec. So I expect that they get utilized and that we inform our community a little bit better. Thank you.
It's Kristen and then Barry.
Okay, well, excuse me, with my Seraptimus hat, we are having, with a little bit of luck, hopefully on St. Patrick's Day, so March 17th, we're having a St. Patrick's Day bash for seniors 50 and above. This, you know, one of our goals certainly for Seraptimus is to decrease isolation among seniors in our community. Isolation, our seniors have been really hard hit, as we all have, but then maybe as much as anyone with being isolated over the last 2 years. So we're excited to finally have an in-person event. So I know in the Parks and Rec newsletter, there's a flyer in there. So if you know anyone 50 and above who may enjoy something like that, that they can contact me and get on the list. And lastly, I'd like to thank the City of American Canyon, to Parks and Rec. CPR, last Saturday, we went to an event over in Roanoke Park and were awarded the CPRS District 1 2021 Community Service Award for outstanding service and support to the City of American Canyon. And you know, we've been supporting them and them us ever since we began over 4 years ago. It's been a great partnership for us and I think for this city. So I really appreciate this award, as we all do in Seraptimus. So thank you.
Thanks. What time is that event?
No, it was last Saturday.
No.
Oh,
sorry.
Oh, that St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah.
It's from 4:30 to 6 at the Adult Activity Center.
Okay, same time as food distribution. Okay, no worries. Thanks. Barry?
Earth Day will be celebrated in the city of Napa at the Oxbow downtown. So they're back. They had to do virtual Earth Days the last couple of years. So that's Sunday, April 24th from 11 till 4 p.m. It's a pretty big celebration. And the gal that's running it, Taylor Raddick, she's gotten the Bottle Rock folks to run the stage. So it'll probably be some good music, lots of taco trucks, April 24th. And the Vine Trail is doing a fundraiser kind of ongoing for the month of May. They're going to do teams and people are going to walk or run or really any way you can do mileage to raise money and get sponsored. And that'll go towards the Vine Trail. And I think that's all I have.
I'm not seeing other hands, so I'm going to put in a pitch for the Kiwanis drive-through pickup crab feed and online auction. If you haven't gotten a chance to, if you wanted, it's March 12th, and the pickups are based on when you get your ticket for $4.35, $5.36. We also have an online auction that is. Let me go back to tickets. Tickets sales end at midnight on Friday night. If you don't have a link and want it, please let me know and I'll send it off to you. We also have a great online auction. over 100 items, 21 restaurants, 21 lots of wine, of course. Live band performances by 2 local bands, including Clarence's, a DJ, Vacation at Cabo. That auction ends, got Jason's attention there. And the auction ends on Thursday, March 10th at 10 p.m. So I can send the links to both of those 2 people. As you know, Kiwanis has, for the last 2 years during the pandemic, has been distributing food, starting in the schools, and then Boys and Girls Clubs and Aquatic Center. We're now doing once a month with the USDA distribution. We're serving 100 families. So our top distribution was 160, maybe 200 a week. Now we're at 100 once a month. So the proceeds from the crab feed support high school scholarships, teacher grants, youth organizations, individual youth doing projects, and of course the emergency food pantry. So it's a great cause. The crab is great. The pasta sauce is our sauce we've done for 22 years, and it's an amazing pasta sauce. So, and Kristen is doing her signature coleslaw. So anyway, enough of that. I hope you all will help. Oh, I didn't mention the dessert auction. There are some great desserts, including Karina's tiramisu. And so anyway, things to check out. I will leave it at that. Yes, Barry?
I forgot to mention that there'll be an Earth Day celebration in American Canyon also. And I believe it's going to be the Friday right before that. So that would be April 22nd, I believe. And I think the ACCPF is very heavily involved, if not running it. So that Friday, April 22nd in American Canyon, and then April 24th in downtown Napa at the Oxbow.
And what are the hours on the 22nd event?
I don't know. I'm sorry.
Okay. Ellie, do you know?
Janelle sent me an email. We're working on the details. I have a meeting with her on Friday, so we should be able to nail down the times. But Barry's correct. They are planning something on the 22nd.
Great. Thank you. Anybody else comments or future items for consideration?
I just want to add one more thing that came out today that I neglected to mention. So ACCPF is partnering with Napa RCD for a fire recovery and forest wildflower hike. So save the date on March 26th, and the information is on the Facebook page for ACCPF.
Great, thank you. Seeing no other hands, I think it's time to ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And who is that?
Barry.
Barry, okay. And the second by?
A second.
Who was that?
Tara.
Tara, okay. All those in favor, do we have to do a roll call for adjourning?
Nope.
Nope. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, at 8:43, thank you all. Have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.